as we've been hearing through all the sessions at the Microsoft Future Ready Industry Week, merely adopting technology and automating processes is not the answer. The key is to integrate technology and operations ground up. Next up, Aparna Gupta, the Executive Director, Customer Success at Microsoft India, dives into the fundamental role and integration of technology in this conversation with K V Dipu, COO, Bajaj Allianz General Insurance Company.
Thanks, Mr. Dipu, for joining us today. We really look forward to getting insights from an industry veteran like yourself. So to start off our conversation, if you look at the insurance sector, several new technologies are proving to be game changers in driving what could be seen as a digital makeover of this sector. So from your vantage point, what are some of the key technology trends that are redefining general insurance sector, and not just in India, but also globally?
Thank you, Aparna. Looking forward to an engaging conversation with you, and the audience. Yes, the insurance industry, has definitely had digital makeover, over the last several years, and especially, in the last 2 years, when various firms across the globe, were forced to go global. If you look at customers, and if you look at the whole gamut of customer servicing, contact centers were shut down virtually overnight, and firms had to get their customers to gravitate towards customer-facing assets. And that's when the entire digital servicing saw a huge spike. So if you look at our own landscape, we moved from nearly 80% contact center servicing and 20% digital servicing to the other way around. At the peak of the pandemic, 80% of our customers were getting service through digital assets. And these comprise our AI-driven chatbot, our mobile app, our customer portal, and a host of other assets. And customers can avail of, virtually all services, using these digital assets. And I think the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. At that time, while we were wondering, how customers would adapt to the new assets, our customer grievances actually fell by a huge 90%. So that's, the way in which the whole spectrum has panned out from a digital servicing point of view over the last few years. And coming to a point around what are the specific technologies, which have enabled this transition, I'll pick various point solutions, and then try to illustrate, how they've helped us. For example, if you look at the claim process, which is the moment of truth as far as the insurance industry is concerned, AI and machine vision, have helped us. Earlier, in case you crashed your car, unfortunately, you would call up the insurance company and they would depute a surveyor who would visit the site of the crash, make an assessment, submit his report, and the whole process would kick in. Today, it's a 2-click process. All you need to do as a customer is to take photographs of the car and then upload them using the mobile app. The AI engine at the back end will assess the images and in a matter of 20 minutes, up to certain amounts, convey the amount back to the customer. The customer gives his consent and then the amount is transferred. So what took days, now takes 20 minutes up to certain amounts. And that's thanks to AI and machine vision. Similarly, if you look at travel insurance, nearly 5 years ago, we launched a blockchain-based travel claim settlement solution by which, we changed the entire value chain of the process. So let's say you have to take a long distance international flight, let's say from Mumbai to New York. And if your flight got delayed, earlier, you would worry about, making arrangements all over again at the location. And if somebody were to tell you that you're eligible for a claim payout, thanks to your flight delay, you wouldn't think about it because that's not your priority. Plus, you need to make a lot of effort, convey some proof of delay, get into documentation, so on and so forth. So we shifted the onus onto ourselves. We launched a blockchain-based solution by which the onus of flight delay was on us. We had immutable proof that the flight was delayed, and the customer just needs to let us know that he's on that flight, and then we would basically transfer the funds to him. So that's how we were able to change the entire value chain. So whether it is AI in the form of customer servicing, whether it's AI and machine vision in the area of motor claims, whether it was blockchain, in the area of travel claims. I think, all these technologies, came to the fore. And in the last 2 years, they actually proved themselves because when we all moved to not just a digital way of working, but a digital way of living, customer service continued uninterrupted. And the fact that our grievances actually fell by a whopping 90% at the peak of the pandemic and digital servicing continues to stay even today as we enter into the new normal, I think is proof of the fact, that the whole industry, has gravitated from the manual plane to the digital plane.
Very good insights, and I think quite a few really catching points. I think first, how customers at the center of it, which is which is what I'm sure your key purpose and focus would be. Second, I think you spoke about how the game changers involved change at your end, change enabled by technology, and then adoption by the customer also, and all of it kind of just elevated to a different level. And yeah, what better way for it to as a validation that it just stays forever, right? That becomes the new normal for your end users also. So very nice examples, and I think the damage detection one is something I have experienced firsthand. So yes, it can really feel so good from an end user perspective. So maybe switching gears, and maybe I'll expand the horizon to financial services as well and insurance sector, where there is a big renewed focus on data. And I think in the past there has been conversation about data being the oil for what you want to do and how you want to drive insights, and especially real-time insights, and how they can create a differentiated value for your customer just in time, and especially in today's world, like you spoke, our customers are so digital savvy. So how pivotal is the role of cloud and data, and how they then make some of the examples like the AI one you already gave, but even analytics come alive as a strategy around customer experience for your organization. And maybe you can, you've already shared some near-term examples that you literally turned around in the COVID timeframe. But even if you think from a longer-term strategy perspective, what would be, some of those shifts that you anticipate?
That's a very good question, Aparna. If you look at, data analytics, cloud adoption, they're all integral components of, today's digital pivot, towards a more informed customer experience strategy. Firstly, let's look at data. It firstly starts with, ingestion of data. Earlier, we used to get, data in the form of paper. And then, today you get data in multiple versions, right? You have paper, you have soft copies, you have voice, you have images, you have text, right? You have all forms of data. So firstly, you need to figure out how to manage all these forms of data. And when you look at that, you also need to look at dimensions such as data storage, of course, in a safe and secure manner, data security as well, because just one incident, and then things can go completely out of whack. So how do you manage data? By keeping data secure, by ensuring that you also take customer consent. So that becomes a huge part of the landscape. And it goes back to ensuring that you have a robust data management security in place, and you also have good governance in terms of completely updating all your procedures. The second angle, Aparna, is if you look at the last couple of years, as we have moved from manual servicing to digital servicing, the customer footprint has become increasingly digital, and that's where managing customer data becomes even more critical. And that's where the cloud comes in, because we were able to convert these data marts into a single data lake. And today we have a 360-degree view of the customer, which not only helps us from the point of view of servicing the customer better, but also ensuring that we are able to sell him the right product, from an upsell or a cross-sell point of view. So that's where cloud adoption comes in. We get the standard benefits in terms of avoiding hardware obsolescence. As I mentioned, data going into a single data lake, 360-degree view, so on and so forth. Another important aspect when it comes to managing data, while of course we adopt the cloud, is also ensuring that we have the right analytics engine at the back end, because you can slice and dice data in several ways. But how do you get meaningful insights? And that's where it's not only having the right analytics tools, but also ensuring that you have teams who understand the business, because it's all about how you basically manage the data, because our middleware basically acts as a bridge between our core platform and our analytics engine and customer facing assets. So when customers approach us using these myriad assets, it is the middleware which ensures that it's able to give quick insights to our customer facing associates who can then ensure real time resolution. So that's how it's helped. And to your point on examples, Aparna, I'll maybe just pick one example, to highlight, how this entire landscape of, data and cloud can help us notch up customer experience dramatically. Let's say there is a customer, who clicks our branch on maps, and he's basically, trying to find our address. Earlier the whole focus would have been on ensuring that, the address is updated and, the customer is able to, reach the branch, as quickly as possible. But today what happens is, there's a bot which pops up, and the bot says, I see that you're looking for a branch. Is there a way I can service you digitally? And in cases, the bot is able to, serve the customer digitally, and it obviates, the need for the customer to come to the branch. That's how, by managing data properly, you can ensure that, you can give real-time servicing. And of course, the fact that today we can even personalize at scale, because you can't have a one-size-fits-all approach.
Really rounded answer, I would say, because you actually covered all points. I mean, you started with the whole data governance, data privacy. You talked about scale, and the what is in it from a cloud standpoint, especially if you want to meet this ambition of hyper-personalization. And I think every end user just sees that as a norm in today's world. I think the middleware one was also very powerful because that's usually the overlooked one. Like people just kind of take it for granted. So again, thanks for calling that out. So maybe the final question before we wrap up, and I don't think we can have a conversation without bringing fintech as a community into this conversation, right? So fintech is disrupting the insurance industry in several ways. So whether it's about fast tracking application process, streamlining claim filing, automating underwriting process. So they've you have, I think, players who are kind of taking it use case by use case. Or just building experiences which are just more natural for the digital native generation, which is what our largest kind of base of users is going to be, in order to kind of provide that hyper-personalized experience that you spoke about before. So how are you and organizations like yours thinking about integrating them as a differentiator in what you're trying to solve or the experience that you're trying to provide to your end users?
Again, that's a very good question, Aparna. And if you look at the whole, fintech / insurtech landscape, while you spoke about fintechs, I'm introducing insurtechs because as an insurance player, we work with both. You see, there are 2-3 dimensions here. I think the first dimension is, while there are various ways of classifying fintechs and insurtechs, but broadly, you can look at them from 2 points of view. One is, the new kid on the block, who comes up with, a business model, which challenges existing conventions. And ultimately, our belief is, that if there is a value proposition which is good for the customer, then it's eventually good for the whole industry, because then the whole industry, is forced to raise its bar. So from that point of view, the other aspect is, and to the point that you made, fintechs or insurtechs who do not necessarily come up with a full service business model, but who actually look at the value chain and then try to see, how they can come out with the best value proposition for that component of the value chain. And that's where, they get into partnerships with existing players. And that turns out to be a symbiotic relationship, because for the startup, they get a huge customer base, thanks to the partnership with the player. And then, they can scale up, as quickly as possible. And for the existing player, it becomes, a new way of, adding value to their customers, because across the value chain, if you pick this particular solution and then, you give it to your customers, then it's a win-win for everyone. The startup gains scale, the existing player is able to come out with, an innovative solution, and the customer benefits, from this. I told you about, the blockchain-based travel claim settlement solution. So there, we worked in partnership, with one of the new kids on the block, to come out of that solution. Similarly, if you look at our AI-driven chatbot, we again worked in partnership, with the new player. The claim solution that I spoke to you about, again, we worked with a player, to develop that solution. One more thing, which we need to keep in mind is, let me give you the example of claims again. Now, you might have, a new player, who comes out with the solution, who basically says that we don't need a surveyor. The engine, can basically assess the images, and then give you the output in a matter of seconds. But what we need to understand there is, they may have the solution, but how will the AI engine give that amount in 20 minutes if it is not taught in the right way? And that expertise, cannot just come by coming out of the technological solution. You need to have domain expertise. You need to have people, who have done claims for decades, who can figure out, what are the fraudulent patterns. And that's where, we have seen, that the combination of a startup and an existing player can sometimes, truly bring in complementary strengths, and create a win-win, for the customer. Because domain expertise, comes from the existing behemoth, and an entirely new way of, looking at customer servicing, can come in from a startup. Another example is IoT. If you look at a lot of insurance players globally, they've come out with telematics. Telematics is basically a product by which you place a device in the car, and now, the car becomes smart. You have access to the driving behavior of the customer, and the customer and the insurance player can take an informed view, let's say during renewal time, based on the customer's driving behavior. Now, look at the Indian context. It's slightly different because not everybody drives, his or her own car. You have a lot of people, who use drivers. So we said, how do we come out with a solution, which also helps in that context? And that's where, we actually innovated and we came out with a feature called geofencing. So what happens in geofencing is, and let's take an example of, a family where the husband and wife are going to work, and let's say the children are dropped to school. The driver drops, husband and wife in the morning and drops the kids in, to school. Now, afternoon is when, the challenge happens. Both husband and wife are working and the driver picks up kids, either drops them back to school or maybe it takes them to a daycare facility. But given, all the concerns around child safety, that's when, parents start to get worried. So what you can do in geofencing is you can mark the traditional routes the driver can take. You can say that, there's a route A or a route B or a route C, from school, to the destination. And should he take the car on a different route, you get an alert. So that's how, you can leverage technology, which fintechs and insurtechs, bring to the table, apply your expertise, and then come out with solutions, which make sense. A startup, for example, may not think of geofencing because you need to understand the insurance landscape or the customer landscape. But when the two come together and, domain marries innovation, you can have exponentially powerful customer experience. So we've leveraged solutions across various points of the value chain. And I think, that's what, keeps us ahead, be it from a transformation perspective or from an innovation perspective. If you just go back to COVID, I think we did not just survive, but we actually thrived through the crisis. I mentioned to you that our customer grievances dipped by 90%. And also when we got an independent net promoter score study done through a third-party market research firm, we found that we enjoyed the highest scores on the marketplace and by a significant distance over our competitors.
Yeah, no, I mean, really, again, very good insights. And I think such a powerful example or set of examples you shared on even the symbiotic relationship, if you do it well with these fintechs or, as you said, the insurance techs in the space. And I think the amount of acceleration then that it lets you drive is absolutely powerful. But again, yeah, your call out on the domain knowledge and the functional knowledge and how, when those two combine, it just gives such a super powerful solution. I was also reflecting when you were talking about the AI-driven insights on, even decision-making using AI and examples of like are some of these, fintechs leading with responsible AI parameters. And in an industry like yours, I mean, it's going to be like a non-negotiable. So I'm sure, you have examples of, how you're driving that kind of oversight or discipline around that as well as you solve like real-world problems. I loved your last example. And again, such a contextual example that I'm sure, many of our audience will relate to. I would love to go on, but I think we are on time. So I will have to stop here. Thank you so much once again for sharing your insights and really loved all your examples in how, you make it come alive for your end users ultimately every day. And in this, low touch, highly digital, and a very natural place where our end users are today. So thank you once again, and I look forward to being in touch with you.
Thank you, Aparna. The feeling is mutual. I loved your questions. That's why I was able to, speak with so much of passion and enthusiasm. I'm glad, you found it interesting, and I hope the audience, finds, value in our, discussion as well. But thank you so much, for being, such a wonderful host.
Thank you.